Great. Thank you very much indeed. So yeah, welcome everybody. If people are desperate to ask a question as we go, then I think the method is to raise your hand with that little button, and Andrew will probably jump in because I'm not going to be monitoring that. But otherwise, yes, pop things in the Q&A panel, which should be available to you, and then we can have that Q&A session after the presentation. But yes, if you're desperate to chip in, please do. Don't just sit there thinking that I don't know what I'm talking about, or there's some burning question that you would like to answer. So yes, please do. So we're going to be talking about the power and potential of technology to change people's lives. I'm definitely, preaching to the choir here, being the British Computer Society, but at the same time, the angle that we're going to concentrate on today is the potential that it has to help people who have particular needs that maybe aren't met by normal ways of doing things. In my case, being completely blind, it's pen and paper, for example, but of course everything's moving digital, which is just the way I like it. And we'll look at some of the solutions that I might use a little bit later on. But just a bit of scene setting at the start, and I appreciate that I'm talking to a very, many of you are very technologically literate, probably more so than me, but so I apologize in advance if there is any kind of grandmother and eggs scenario here, but hopefully this is going to be interesting and somewhat informative as well. So if we go on to the first slide, oh, why is that? So this is a very antiquated now looking setup, a computer with a keyboard, a mouse and a screen. And that is, back in the 80s with the advent of the personal computer, obviously everything changed, and now 90% of jobs in the UK use a computer of some shape or form. So it's absolutely ubiquitous, and obviously outside of work, we're always on technology, or many of us are as well. And this, the power of what we can see here is in its redundancy, in its ability to give you options. So the screen that we see here, obviously you can get monitors in many different shapes and sizes. You can change the settings on the display to make it easier to see. For example, if you have dyslexia, to change the font size or style, to change the background color to a nice beige, say. I'm going to turn my phone off because it's talking to me. Oh, sorry. So everything talks. And if you can't see the mouse pointer, then you can make it larger, etc., etc. If you can't see at all, then you would use screen reading software, which is what I use to access a computer. And if the sun is on your monitor, then you can pull the blinds in your office, etc. It was a nice controlled environment. If you have a keyboard preference for, a more ergonomic one than the one we see here, or you want to use speech recognition, whatever it might be, employ keyboard hotkeys to make yourself much more productive than moving and clicking the mouse a lot. There are so many choices, and that was what really empowered people who needed those choices, needed to have different options. Maybe you can't use a standard mouse, maybe you need to use a trackball because you can't easily grip things, or maybe you need to use a joystick like you would on an electric wheelchair, for example. So all of these choices meant that people who needed to do things in a different way were really empowered. And that tower obviously comes in lots of different shapes or sizes. Now it could easily be built into the screen, or it could be halfway across the world, or up in the cloud, or whatever you want to say. So, there are so many different choices, and that's the power of the technology that we're talking about here. Again, you guys know all this already. I'm just gonna, I'm viewing your screen. Just trying to sort out the fact that I can't see my screen. Hang on a sec. Bear with me a sec. Let's see if that's worked. No, it's just going bonk at me. That's fine though, I think I can remember the order. So on the next slide, if we go on to the next slide, then what we've got here is somebody squinting at a mobile phone. And that's because, a couple of decades later, we started to get mobile, and even more so now in the noughties with the advent of the smartphone. Everything now has changed because that choice that you had to be able to control every last degree of your environment, to be able to get a bigger monitor, to have exactly the keyboard that you want, all of that went out of the window with mobile computing. We're now living in the age of extreme computing, and for people that had particular requirements, then thankfully many of these devices come with a range of accessibility settings. If you did a spider diagram of, mapping all of the settings in iOS, for example, on an iPhone, then the settings under accessibility, which Apple has now brought up out from underneath general to the top level, which I think is brilliant because everybody should be fiddling with their devices to get an optimal experience for them. I don't think anyone should settle for a vanilla out of the box experience with any technology that they use. We're all different shapes and sizes, etc. But that spider diagram would be well over 60% of it in those accessibility settings. So these are settings, a large area of the settings that you can change on your mobile phone, for example, that you would ignore at your peril because they are really, really powerful. Now, this lady might not actually have a disability at all. She might just be trying to look at a small sheet of shiny glass on a sunny day. And if we don't build our websites and our mobile apps with an eye for inclusion, in this case, for example, color contrast, making sure that they are sufficiently contrasting, a decent default font size in an app, for example, then someone who is temporarily impaired by, in this case, sunny day, small screen, is going to benefit from them as well. So if we do, then they'll benefit. If we don't, then they will struggle, just like somebody with a vision impairment, for example, would need to have those considerations 24/7. And similarly, if we move on to the next slide. So on this slide, is this the chap with the holding a phone?
That's correct.
Yeah, let me just quickly, I'm going to have one more, see if I can get access to that is really weird. All I get is your floating window on top of my notes.
Well, that's very frustrating. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm going to see if I can sort it out somehow. So I tried to find a picture of a person with big mutant sausage fingers, as some of us do have. Not me personally, but I know many men have big fingers. And we're not all using massive phablet phones yet, although they are obviously getting bigger over time, although they're kind of going back the other way as well, with the iPhone 12 mini, for example. You can get many smaller phones as well. So for the time that you're trying to use that phone with your big fingers, you have exactly the same requirements that somebody without big mutant sausage fingers who has a motor or dexterity impairment needs to be able to operate that technology. And it's exactly the same as the requirements that they have if they have a tremor using a mouse, for example, on a computer. So good separation of tappable elements or clickable elements, default, a minimum fonts, a minimum size for buttons for tappable areas, 44 by 44 px if you're interested. All of these things, not time dependent functionality, or if you must have, then make sure that it's a little bit more generous than you'd like. There are lots of issues for people who have a permanent motor or dexterity impairment that are exactly equivalent to people that are trying to use their phone when they haven't got little dainty fingers, because it's a completely different paradigm. It's computing on the edge. If we go on to the next slide, is this a chap holding a cup of coffee?
Hold on, it would be if I could press the right button. So.
Oh yeah, I found it. Okay, I managed to do it. Okay, good. Yes, one-handed juggle. Are you on that slide now? Have you moved on?
One-handed juggle you're on now.
Great.
Apologies. I was trying to use shortcuts and it was causing all the slides to jump
Just
through.
left and right arrow, I think, but yeah.
I'll leave my microphone on and keep quiet.
Okay, thanks. So yes, this chap, this particular slide I conceived pre-COVID, so apologies. What we're talking about here is a very strange phenomenon, which is being in a queue for coffee at work, say, or out and about, and you were talking with a colleague or a friend because you're nice and sociable that way, and now you've managed to finally get your cup of coffee, and you've only got a minute and a half left in your coffee break, for example, to do a transaction on your phone. It's to text someone, or it's to order an Uber for later on, or buy something on Amazon, whatever it might be. If you are significantly time constrained like that, then you have the exact same requirements for extreme usability. You don't want to be foxed by what you're trying to do because it's unclear that somebody with a learning difficulty or disability has to be able to successfully complete that transaction without support, however much time they have. So extreme usability is what you get when you follow the guidelines that are for people that have more extreme requirements. Also, he's using that phone one-handed, and I pretty much guarantee that everyone on this call today has used their phone one-handed today, if not many times today. And that's because we're using our phones a lot, and sometimes we don't bother to use two hands, or we've got something in our other hand like he has here. So again, for that period, you're not as dexterous as you would be if you were taking time and using one hand to hold it and one hand to tap, etc. So again, exactly the same requirements. They're all covered by the guidelines, and this is a message that we get across loud and clear in our advocacy work, in the business case, in talking with clients who are struggling to get budgets signed off, because we're talking to the passionate people within the organization, but they're not necessarily the ones that are the decision makers or the budget holders, to say that actually accessible design now should be table stakes, to make sure that your products are fit for purpose in this extreme computing age. And if that wasn't coffee, if that was alcohol, for example, and he'd had a good night out, again, pre-COVID, hopefully post-COVID as well, then if he was trying to order that Uber, then the Uber app needs to have extreme usability, because if you're a bit worse for wear, the last thing you want is to be baffled by an unintuitive UI or UX. So, it's really important to make sure that it's super usable. And again, that would make it much more easily able to be used by people that had a range of different disabilities. So I've kind of gone on about that enough, I think. If we go on to the next slide, what we've got here is a montage of a number of people with a different, with disabilities potentially. We, people with disabilities, are massive fans of technology for the reasons that I opened up the presentation with, that it's a massive leveler, it's a door opener. For me as a blind person, if I didn't have a talking laptop at university, I wouldn't necessarily have got my degree. In fact, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have. And being employable, I was really lucky to be working with a charity that saw disability as a benefit and that embraced technology. Unfortunately, it's not the same across all employers. I think 73% of people with a vision impairment in the UK are out of work, which is obviously criminal, that statistic, and that's probably reflected in other disability or impairment categories as well. 73%, and that's not just people who are stone blind like me, that's people that have got from all ranges of vision. So it's a real challenge out there, and overcoming the preconceptions that disabled people are going to be problematic in the workplace is quite a challenging one, and something that we're trying to do our bit to address, with hopefully quite compelling arguments about why it's really, really important to think about doing things in an inclusive way. Funnily enough, the Health and Safety Executive brought out some brilliant research recently that said that disabled employees, if they got the right adjustments, are as productive as their able-bodied counterparts and take less sick leave than them and stay longer in their jobs, so they're more loyal. So they're really, really good employees. And then, because that was such a striking set of findings, they followed it up with some research where they canvassed other colleagues within the teams of disabled, where disabled employees work, and they found that the teams that are more diverse are more productive and also take less sick leave and are happier, etc., etc. So I don't need to tell you guys, but having a diverse workforce makes for better products and a happier, healthier, more productive workforce too. I just mentioned before we go on then. So some of the technologies that I use, obviously I'm listening to the speech at the moment. I don't know if people are aware of these Bluetooth enabled sunglasses by Bose. There are quite a few ones out there, but this is primarily the way that I listen to my phone. And my phone, obviously, it's just a normal, well, iPhone SE 2020. Oh, so I've just turned the screen on. It's called Screen Curtain. And from a privacy point of view, a blind person doesn't know who's kind of looking over their shoulder, etc. So you would turn on the screen curtain, which is a built-in feature, as is the speech output voiceover. And with the screen curtain on, it's more private. And obviously I've got, you know, more battery life to play with now, particularly on OLED screens, where turning on the screen curtain actually turns off the every single pixel, whereas with this it just dims the lighting panel behind the LCD. But yeah, so there's lots of benefits from embracing technology for your workforce, and the individual cumulative benefits, positive benefits for disabled people across the country and across the world is absolutely immeasurable. It really is. You know, for me, the thought of not being able to use technology tomorrow, you know, it would be the same as you guys not being able to. But the challenge for me is that inaccessibility in apps and websites is an ongoing struggle. And I think we're going to finish off with something that is a bit of a group exercise that might make that feel a bit more real for you guys as well. If we go on to the next slide. So on my phone, yes, it's a little bit more challenging to use a small sheet of glass than a great big keyboard like I've got on the desk in front of me. So there are some, you know, challenges there, but it's incredibly powerful. I've now got all the power of the computer with me all the time. And not only that, when some of your own senses don't work, like in my case, vision, the extra sensors in a smartphone, like the camera, the GPS, the accelerometer, I use all of those almost on a daily basis. Certainly pre-COVID, when I was out and about, I was using all of them on a daily basis. And what we're going to look at here is a free app from Microsoft. As it happens, they're really active in this space, and thankfully they've really embraced iOS. They've kind of shrugged off the policy of, you know, not wanting to be on every platform, which is brilliant. And the result is really powerful apps like this. This is called Seeing AI. We're just going to watch a quick video clip of how it works. It's a free app, only on iOS, unfortunately. There are equivalents on Android and other apps on iOS as well. But this uses the camera and machine learning capabilities. It's actually the Microsoft's cognitive services APIs that are free for relatively low traffic usage. And so now you've got cutting edge AI that any organization can leverage without having to reinvent the wheel. So let's see what this combination, this powerful combination, does for somebody like me who's got no vision. You could fire it up.
I'm sorry, hold on.
Seeing AI is a
Yep, here it is.
Microsoft research project for people with visual impairments. The app narrates the world around you by turning the visual world into an audible experience. Point your phone's camera, select a channel, and hear a description. The app recognizes saved friends,
Jenny near top right, 3 feet away.
describes the people around you, including their emotions.
28-year-old female wearing glasses looking happy.
It reads text out loud as it comes into view, like on an envelope
Ken Lawrence, P.O. Box,
or a room entrance,
Conference 2005.
or scan and read documents like books and letters. The app will guide you and recognize the text with its formatting.
Top and left edge is not visible. Hold steady. Lease agreement. This agreement
When paying with cash, the app identifies currency bills.
$20.
When looking for something in your pantry or at the store, use the barcode scanner with audio cues to help you find what you want.
Campbell's tomato soup.
When available, hear additional product details.
Heated microwave bowl on height.
And even hear descriptions of images in other apps like Twitter by importing them into Seeing AI.
A close-up of Bill Gates.
Finally, explore our experimental features like scene descriptions to get a glimpse of the future.
I think it's a young girl throwing a frisbee in the park.
Experience the world around you with the Seeing AI app from Microsoft.
Thanks. Another brilliant app that I use when I'm out and about is also from Microsoft, and it's called Soundscape. And it uses the GPS, and it has lots of information about POIs, points of interest. and intersections and obviously road names, etc. And as I'm walking along, it can tell me in a sort of a 3D surround effect where things are that I'm passing. So it will say, bus stop 27 meters, and because it's coming from 10 o'clock, then I know that's where it is. And again, going back to these frames, these Bose frames, they actually have a compass in the frames, and they have an API that Microsoft took advantage of. So if I'm wearing the sunglasses, if I turn my head, all of those pan around me, so that I actually don't have to kind of hold the phone and move it around like a Star Trek tricorder or whatever it is, to be able to know exactly when I'm heading towards the thing that I'm aiming for. So this is really, really empowering stuff. And, this is what AbilityNet's all about, helping people with both sides of the equation, helping disabled people get the exact solutions and the right, customization, and also working with organizations to make sure that what the disabled people will be accessing online or on their devices is also inclusive too. If we go on to the next slide. Here we've got another video, unapologetically another Apple related video. Apple really are in the vanguard here, and they have single-handedly, I would almost argue, turned accessibility from a kind of a necessary bolt-on activity from a compliance point of view to actually something that adds value to the brand. And in a recent earnings call, where all the investors in Apple stock grill Tim Cook and the CFO, etc., on their decisions, one of them said, "Why do you spend so much money on accessibility?" And Tim Cook actually got really quite animated about it, and basically in so many words said, "Look, if you think that money spent on accessibility is not money well spent, then basically get out of Apple. I don't want your money, get out of our stock," kind of thing. He could have obviously talked about the business case, because it makes better products for everyone, as we've alluded to earlier, but he chose to, it's not a box ticking exercise for them. They go the extra mile. It's a Rolls-Royce solution when you're using an Apple product, right down to the toolbox that they provide for developers of apps, makes for a much more inherent experience if the developers take little or no time to layer on accessibility out of the box, the controls, etc., all nicely labeled. You actually have to break accessibility when it comes to an iOS app by going custom, by choosing to do a non-standard control, etc. So what we're going to look at here is voice control, which came into iOS 12, I want to say, and has improved ever since. And this is how somebody who can't touch the screen at all, can't use their hands at all, is able to use their iOS device.
The new Amazon Echo has everyone asking Alexa for help.
Sorry, I've done the wrong one. Hold on.
No, that's fine. Did we skip over, or is this? It might just be me.
Sorry, we've gone from Microsoft Seeing AI app to
straight to this.
So who exactly is accessibility for?
Oh, okay, and that's what this plays. Okay, so all right, we may or may not. Sorry about that. We may or may not get a video about somebody using voice control. If we don't, I would strongly recommend turning on voice control on your iOS device and seeing how simple it is to just say what you see on the screen and drive everything by voice. I'm going to say, for everyone who's a Siri skeptic, I am absolutely a Siri skeptic. I much prefer the Echo. I do a daily podcast, which we're up to episode 1503, I think now, where every single day we look at a different skill or bit of built-in functionality on the Echo, and we'll never, we're in no danger of running out. But yeah, for anyone who's a Siri skeptic, for good reason, really, this is much more powerful than that. So don't think that, just because Siri is a bit mediocre, that turning on voice control and putting your phone down or your iPad or your Mac down and not touching it again isn't something that's going to be really, really eye-opening for you too. So apologies, I might have set up the wrong video here. What we're looking at here is talking about the Echo, what I would consider like the third age of computing. So we've had, PC, then we had mobile, and now we are into the age of what I would call ambient computing, which is where you don't know or necessarily care where the device is that answers you or gives you the information or the functionality that you need. You just talk to the air and something happens, hopefully the right thing. So smart speakers are really, really empowering and getting better all the time. If you tried an Echo or a Google Home or Nest, as they're called now, a year ago and think that it's the same today and you weren't necessarily impressed, go again and have another go. The discoverability, the sophistication in what it surfaces for you is really, really compelling. What we're going to look at here, though, and apologies if this is in any way offensive, it's supposed to be a kind, if slightly irreverential look at however easy to use a smart speaker is. And certainly they don't come with an instruction manual. You're supposed to be able to just try asking for things. For a certain generation, there may still be some way to go before the A lady, I don't want to say her name, there's one right here, is going to be super easy to use for the older generation, what this video calls the greatest generation.
Wake up.
The dictation microphone icon.
Voice control is a breakthrough feature that gives you full control of your devices, with just your voice, period. It's a whole new way to do everything you love, period. Like this. Correct love.
A list of numbered options.
16.
The word is replaced by a red heart.
Open photos.
Ian sits in a wheelchair in front of an iMac.
Scroll up. Show numbers. 13.
A man with a bike.
Click share.
Share options.
3.
Messages.
Tim. Next field.
Ian composes a message.
Let's try this one today. Thumbs up emoji. Click send. Open maps. Show grid. Long press at 20.
A marked location on the Pacific Coast Scenic Byway.
Open app switcher.
Ian's wheelchair-mounted iPhone.
4. Tap share. Tap Tim. Tap send.
Now, Ian rides his motorized wheelchair across a pedestrian bridge over a blue river. Later, he uses a sip and puff controller to ride along a forest trail. Tim bikes up next to him.
Hey, good to see you. Open music. Turn up the volume.
Tim and Ian look out over a glistening mountain lake, an Apple logo.
Okay, so obviously it's an Apple ad, but at the same time, that was not smoke and mirrors there, guys. So yes, that was the video about voice control. Sorry. Maybe the opening of it.
Probably my fault rather than
No,
yours.
not at all. I think maybe the opening of it sounded a bit like the next one that we're going to look at. What's the title of the next slide you got there?
The age of ambient computing is upon
Okay,
us.
and it's got a video in it.
Yep.
Okay, good. All right then. So this is the second one that we were talking about, which is about helping the greatest generation with what might be future versions of the Echo that are even more usable than they are now. It's gonna, oh yeah, okay. Great. So yeah, apologies if that was in any way offensive, but I think the sentiment was kind. And this, you know, they are incredibly useful, and maybe we'll get there to the point where they're so useful and so intelligent that they will be able to be a real boon to people of all ages. But we're already seeing that, you know, particularly in lockdown, having a device that is so easy to interface with, if you can remember the name, to invoke it, to be able to start a video call with somebody, or for somebody to drop in on you, if that's set up that way, where you don't even have to remember how to answer it and you're suddenly in an audio or a video call, and you can, you know, do a whole range of useful services and functions with this very inexpensive device. If we go on to the next slide, I mentioned Dot to Dot. This is just a shameless plug in case anyone wants to subscribe. You can obviously listen to it on your Echo as well, but you have to enunciate. It's a terrible name for a podcast. You have to say, "A lady, play the dot to dot podcast." Just put little gaps in there. Otherwise, it'll give you Doctor something or other. And the last feature that no, was it the last one or the penultimate feature that we saw in that video, which was about where is the remote control? The Echo shows, which are the Echoes with a screen, have something similar to that if you've got the camera slide open. So you can slide it across if you're concerned about privacy, and you can mute the mics if you're ditto. You can hold up, and anyone can do this if you've got an Echo Show, just hold up a packet of something or whatever the product is and say, what am I holding, or what's this, or what's in my hand? And she'll try and grab text or a barcode, a bit like Seeing AI that we saw earlier, and she'll tell you what it is. So, you know, again, for someone with a vision impairment, it's really, really useful. Depending on the database that it has about a particular product, you can ask, it will offer you if you want more information, and in some cases it has nutritional information, even recipe suggestions, etc. So that is really powerful. If we go on to the next slide. So looking ahead now into the future, this is me at Mobile World Congress, not last March, but the March before, and I've got some sunglasses that are basically just a glorified Bluetooth headset with a compass built in. But these Vizxx Blade smart glasses are the real deal. They are AR with a built-in camera, so you can point it at products, etc. Just like I was talking about a moment ago with the show and tell feature on the Echo. And because it's also got screens, it will point at that information, it'll point at the product, it'll give it a label, it'll ask you if you want more information. It has voice enablement, you know, a voice assistant capability, as well as a touch screen, well, a touchpad control interface on the side. I couldn't obviously see any of this, but my wife was looking at different booths that they had set up. One of them was a football match on a big screen TV, and it was putting the names of the players hovering over their heads, and you could bring up stats about them and that sort of thing. There were loads of different kind of use cases that it was illustrating with these smart glasses. They're pretty expensive, $3,000 at the moment, but this is definitely coming. We've all heard the rumours of Apple glasses. We've got obviously Google Glass as well, and I think that's the future. The Seeing AI app that we saw earlier is already been updated to leverage the LiDAR capabilities in iPhones 12 Pro, and there you can also have an extra channel, as it's called, an extra feature whereby you can check on social distancing when you're walking along, because the LiDAR is accurate to within 10 centimeters, being able to identify where objects are in space around you and feeding back that information, in my case, through my sunglasses. So that's really, really beneficial. And I'm pretty sure that the Apple glasses will have LiDAR instead of a camera, because there are privacy concerns. And that's one reason why Google Glass, I think, was so poorly received. There was a bit of a backlash because of the people taking, you know, their Google Glass into the men's rooms and things like that without it being obvious that they weren't recording people, etc. So, you know, there's been a bumpy path, but going forward, you know, AR is definitely going to be a canvas that all of us who are producing content, digital content, will have to consider. What are the extra accessibility considerations in thinking about AR when you're overlaying information over real world objects? You know, obviously, like the captions, I'm imagining that we're seeing on the screen here, they're probably on a fixed color background, maybe white text on a black bar, I don't know. But the reason for having the bar behind it, as you know, is when you're watching videos and stuff, the background can be changing a lot, and so that could impede the legibility of the subtitles, etc. So, you know, there are lots of considerations to think about when we look ahead at potential platforms where people are going to be delivering content. And if you are familiar with what the accessibility guidelines encapsulate, what they are about and how they're trying to make the content more inclusive on existing platforms, then you can more readily apply those to future-facing platforms as well. The recognised world guidelines, WCAG, don't have much to say about AR situations quite yet. But if we go on to the next slide, we're nearly at the end, guys, you'll be pleased to know. On this slide, we've got a video of what I'm reliably informed is an actual real-life bus stop in London. And this is a Pepsi advert, by the way, but apparently it is a real bus stop. And I'll explain afterwards why on earth we've looked at this video.
Let me flip this script. I feel privileged for all who can witness this. I am close to divine. Know the moment is mine, the moment of sign. To all the squares that ask around, we getting it. My skills pay me. I'm trying to get a million, baby, with an adopted flow that God gave me. Me now. Tell whoever runners that they spot is temporary till I think I got that one. Tell Miss I'm on my wealth tip. So when we cash out soon, I'm just investing.
I'm telling you, this is how it works, man. There's a little camera right here.
Okay, so what's that all about? Well, you know, in the future, I think when transparent screens are going to be easily available, readily available, inexpensive. I mean, basically, you can do it already. If you've got a TFT screen, then you can literally take the back off, take the lighting panel out, and you've got a transparent screen. You've literally got that already. But, you know, it's going to become, I would say, ubiquitous, where just as in many instances now, you know, any vertical surface has a poster on it or an advert or something, you know, advertising real estate is at a premium, then potentially every window that you walk past in a business or even in a bus stop may well be used to display content on, in this case, just to freak out the people waiting at the bus stop. But, you know, it could be information, it could be signage, it could be things that interact with the devices that you're wearing to, you know, then be a temporary larger screen displaying more information just for your own benefit. But nevertheless, you know, you're going to be displaying stuff on a different new medium. And what's inclusive design look like there? You know, there's going to be a period where the guidelines haven't yet kind of caught up. The web content accessibility guidelines, which is where, when it comes to web anyway, it all starts. That's the go-to guidelines to look at, are only really getting to grips with mobile now, and 3.0 isn't around the corner anytime soon. So, you know, we're kind of playing catch up, and if we can at least be aware of the main concepts involved in inclusive design, then we're going to be well prepared to be able to make sensible choices about, you know, advising people or in the content that we create ourselves. If we move on to the next slide. So again, back at Mobile World Congress, this is a picture of an air taxi. So driverless vehicles are potentially just around the corner. There are quite a few places where they're not even being piloted. They're actually in commercial use. In Phoenix, you can hail an autonomous cab just like you can an Uber. And there are no restrictions. There are no ifs and buts. That's it. End of story. Driverless vehicle. And I think the concept of car ownership is going to feel quite antiquated and really very inefficient and you know, in no way cost effective. If you've got a car that is depreciating wildly, you know, every month, that is sitting, taking up space somewhere 95% of the time. We only use our cars on average 5% of the time. Obviously, that's a variable average. That's the average. Some people much less, some people much more. Then it doesn't make sense. You know, much more sensible is when there's a fleet of autonomous vehicles out there of lots of different shapes and sizes, maybe even ones that go up in the air like this one, that can be called, and whatever your preference is, if you've got a slightly higher budget, you can go for a solo ride in full comfort. If you're a bit more cost effective, you can share it with others. There'll be that many autonomous vehicles of different shapes and sizes out on the roads, and so that many people calling them, that chances are, even on a shared ride, you'll still be taken door to door because the algorithms will be clever enough to map out the routes and only, you know, bring you the cab that is going your way, albeit with other people in. And I would probably say that, you know, the screens within that cab, even the windows of the cab, are prime real estate for delivering content on as well. And for people who are in an air taxi like this, behind the, I don't know if it's on the in the photo, but behind the copy of this taxi here, the real version of this taxi, which people were queuing up to get into. It was a massive long queue, so I didn't get in the queue. But behind it is a screen showing that it's actually an action in Qatar. So this is a commercial service actually happening in Qatar. So yeah, in one of these, you know, you're certainly going to be temporarily motor or dexterity impaired and definitely hearing impaired, etc., etc. So, you know, whatever device you're using, you're going to want that extreme usability that we talked about right at the front. So yeah, the future is looking pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to being able to hail an autonomous ride and take me wherever I need to go. So yeah, if we go on to the last slide, what we've got on here is a final video, which actually just audio. It's an audio recording. Capture, you guys all know what capture is. Here's an example of the sort of capture that you might get, although these days they're more often, you know, a number of pictures of, I don't know, road signs or something, traffic signs, partially obscured by trees. And going back to the AI machine learning aspect, this is an arms race, as you know. They will always be one step ahead of the bots because the whole point is to thwart the bots. So, you know, as bots get better about recognizing pictures of traffic signs or whatever, then they will need to get more and more obscure, more and more covered with foliage, more and more blurry in the distance. And that's only going to make things worse for people with a vision impairment, dyslexia, a learning difficulty, whatever it might be. And for me, obviously, because it's not machine readable, there's no redundancy there. I can't say, okay, I'd rather have this, you know, I want to read this by my screen reader, because of course the whole point is that it's not machine readable, it's thwarting the bots. So I would click on the typical wheelchair symbol, which is an odd choice of the icon for the audio alternative, but that's what it is by convention. But the audio alternative is increasingly garbled because it needs to stay one step ahead of, you know, AI when it comes to speech recognition as well, so the bot can't submit the form. So what we're going to do here, and I would normally, if we were in an audience, I would get everyone to whip out their phones or pen and paper and to write down the code. In a situation like this, you know, if the chat was open, I'd ask you to pop it in the chat, but I'm actually going to let you off. If you want to try and jot it down, by all means do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this clip, or rather I'll ask Andrew to, and I want you, Scouts Honour, to listen really hard and think, okay, what was each of those characters? As if your ability to sign up for this service, to purchase this product, depended on it, because it would do if you needed to use this. So yeah, try and put yourself in my shoes for 30 seconds and see how easy it is for you to complete this really vital online transaction, because it's only on the vital ones, although increasingly these days it's on less important forms, etc. as well. But you know, there's a lot hanging on this, guys, so just try and sort of think in that space while you're listening to this lovely recorded code.
Okay, here we go.
9 L 03 7 9 7 Once again, 9 L 03 7 9
Well, there you go. I've done this to a room of 1,800 people and asked them to compare notes with the people around them to see if anyone got the same code, and then put your hand up if you did get the same as your neighbour. Never has a hand gone up in 1,800 people, in smaller, sizes, audience as well. And even if people had got the same as someone around them, it's not a guarantee that that's the actual right code. So this is the kind of, this is about capture, obviously, but let's not think about this as capture. Let's think about this as unlabeled images. Let's think about this as keyboard inaccessible navigation. Let's think about this as tappable areas that are too close together for people that have got big sausage fingers. Whatever it might be, that's what inaccessibility feels like in the flesh right there. So if there's one thing you take away, it's that feeling of dismay when you hit something that's a real obstacle, because digital is so important these days. It's everything really when it comes to a COVID world. Everything's being driven online. The waiting times on the phone alternative are ridiculously long, and everyone is being encouraged to go digital, and we haven't got the support around us. People with disabilities, you could quickly grab a pair of eyes or a support worker. They're not around. You'd have to zoom them in or something. So, this is a challenge. This is a real problem. And hopefully you guys see the sense and the need for doing things accessibly so that you've got nice, inclusive products. Great. I don't know if you're still sharing the screen, but we've got a Q&A slide at the end, which is basically saying time for Q&A.
Wow. Fantastic. Robin, that's a really inspiring presentation. Some of those inventions that have come out are really extraordinary. So I will stop sharing now. I've been unable to keep an eye on the Q&A because I've been having a big screen in front of me. So I don't know if Brian or Jeff have picked up any questions. If anybody wants to raise a hand as well, we should be able to enable you to ask questions directly. Brian or Jeff, are there any questions that you want to ask on behalf of the audience?
We just had one note saying excellent presentation, but no questions.
They've all gone to sleep.
Yeah, no, here we go. John has a question. Do you want me to do it verbally, Andrew? I guess,
if you don't mind.
Yeah. Do you know if anyone is working on things like transalong British Sign Language to speech, which would allow non-deaf persons to understand a deaf person in their native language?
Yes, there are several projects underway about BSL and ASL, American Sign Language Translation. They're quite different languages, by the way.
Right.
The challenge, though, is it's not just the hands, it's the whole body. So it's expressions, it's posture. So that's a massive challenge. And whilst recognition, machine learning that can track the individual fingers, the digits of both hands, the posture, the facial expressions, all that sort of thing is coming on in leaps and bounds. We're not quite there yet where you have a really good translation. And similarly, we're not quite there yet with the opposite way around, which is taking written or a transcript of spoken text, basically a text file, and putting it through an avatar, which would present it as really good, understandable signage, sign language, using an avatar, a virtual person. You might think, well, why can't they just read the transcript? Well, there's a significant portion of people who are deaf or hard of hearing that have poor literacy as well. So signing is their first language.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, John. If you've got a follow-up, then please come back to us. I noticed Carol, actually, she said, excellent presentation. Actually, there is a question following on from that from Carol. Is there an equivalent to voice control within Android phones? I'll let you answer that one, Robin, since you'll know more than me.
Well, I might not. I don't know is the answer. I think there is, but I'm not sure how mature it is. I know that Android has traditionally been playing catch up when it comes to their accessibility features. Up until very recently, TalkBack wasn't even built in. It was from the, you had to get it from the Play Store. Yeah. So that was a bit of a catch-22 when you bought a new device. You'd need it to, you'd need speech to download the speech, if you know what I mean. So Yeah, I don't know, I'm afraid.
So yeah, there is Hey Google, which I know appears on Android phones, and there is a speech recognition. I don't know what it's called. I'm actually using it now. I've just pressed the button on my phone.
Yeah, but you've got
So
dictation there. So you've got
yes,
dictation and you've got the Google Assistant, which are
yeah,
two, yeah, parallels to iOS. But
yeah,
then if you're talking about full voice control, like we saw there, where you can just say anything that's on the screen that's tappable, or you can get it to list all the buttons and it puts a number next to each one, or you
hmm
can say go home to close the app and go back to the, launcher,
yeah.
etc. So I think that is there. I
Yeah, I'm
think.
just not sure how
Yeah.
mature it is myself.
Mhm.
I know that you can send texts and things like that, but
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Using the assistant. Yeah.
yeah.
Hey Google.
So Carol, yeah, there's certainly something worth experimenting with there with
Yeah.
Hey Google.
This is going to sound really awful, but
Mm,
Apple products really are the go-to choice for people with disabilities because
yeah.
it's not in any way a half implemented
Mm,
solution, even to the extent that when they built in voice control, they didn't assume that the people could even see. So, like my sister, she's blind like me, same condition, but she's also got very advanced MS, so she can't use her hands at all. She's only got her voice, and she can drive
right.
it all by voice. And they've made sure that it's compatible with the speech output. So you've got voice in, voice out, to
Hmm.
the extent where there are special voice control commands that are specific to the speech output, which is voiceover, the screen reader on the phone, that only a voiceover user would need to interact with. So yeah, sorry to say that,
That's
but
yeah, that's
yeah,
impressive. Yeah.
really,
Mm,
who'd have thought it?
okay. We've actually got quite a few questions coming in now, so they're stacking up. Um, Anonymous attendee, please describe the accuracy of images that Google Scraperbots give to blind people when there is no alt text.
Really good question. It's comparable across all the platforms. So Facebook do it first party on their website and in their app. Google has that capability when it's indexing images on the web, etc. VoiceOver on iOS has that built in. It's called screen recognition. Android has got something similar, and they're all comparable. It will say, a bit like that Seeing AI that we talked about before, it looks like a person throwing a frisbee in a park, or may contain trees, group of people, supermarket trolley or something, So it's certainly not going to necessarily give you the context. I mean, that one on the thing looks like a girl throwing a frisbee in a park, does kind of give you that. But if you just snap something, or you see an image online or on social media or something, giving the bare bones of the elements in the picture won't necessarily tell you why it's a meme. What's the point of it? So
Yeah.
long way to go yet. A bit like the synthetic speech, until it actually understands what it's reading, it's not going to get the emphasis on the right words or put the
Hmm.
context behind it that are, like behind it, as I just said there, that somebody who's knows where to put the emphasis, a real human would do. So yeah, we're a long way off.
Another one from Anonymous. Thank you so much. The SNL video was so funny and your presentation was very insightful. Loved the examples.
I'm glad they weren't well, that person wasn't offended anyway.
No. When we're looking to the future of AR and VR, where do you see some of the biggest challenges in accessibility and the primary visual world? How do you see that gap being bridged?
I think there's huge opportunities in AR and VR, but there's also challenges. There are groups for whom it's not going to be that transformative. So obviously, like myself, I'm not going to get anything out of VR or AR unless it's voiced as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I would use all the sensors, but just not the heads-up display, and I would have it spoken to me instead in some informative way, or maybe through haptics. There's a lot of haptics being used in particularly iDevices in an informative way, not just to buzz you when a text has come in or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of people. I mean, if you've got low vision and you haven't got any central vision, for example, very common eye conditions, the macula, the middle bit goes first, which is where all the detail is. So wear a pair of VR glasses, shift the image to the left. So now the main part of the image is, coming in at the exact point where you've got some useful vision. The best bit of vision is out of the corner of your left eye, for example. Or if you've got low vision but good field, it's just that everything doesn't look very contrasting, then the ability for machine learning to put a big bold outline around every object in the field of view so that you can find the edges before you smack your thigh on a counter or something, or you can see people coming towards you and it's not just a blur. And obviously that combined with, I don't know, known faces that you've already trained it, could make all the difference for mobility and for sociability for people who have got low vision. I could go on and on. Training for people who have got learning difficulties, when you point your phone or your AR glasses at the kettle, it gives you some helpful information about, what the do's and don'ts of boiling the kettle or whatever it might be, daily living skills. So it's a mixed bag is the answer. There's some real opportunities and some real challenges, a bit like with the digital world in general.
Okay. Another one from Anonymous. What and how does Google show? So what and how does Google show when the image, the image is alt text, such as a church service bulletin? So
if it's a picture of a page of text, for example, then absolutely it'll grab all of that and it'll put it all in the description. Even if there's bits of text scattered around amongst other objects, it will bring it in to that summary. Yeah, I should have mentioned that before.
Okay. WCAG, initials WCAG, often seems quite vague. Do you think it needs more detail?
If you click through, there are quite a lot of technical techniques, but still it's a challenge to apply it, which is why, it's not an easy, I wouldn't want to sort of say that, underplay the complexity of really, if it was your day job to make sure that every last checkpoint in the WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, was complied with, then that's a full day job, really. That's your full-time job. But there are easy things that we can do to get the low-hanging fruit, and then there are tools that you can use. But if it was that simple, then our 40-strong accessibility consultancy team wouldn't exist, because organizations wouldn't need to get some external help with the process. So yeah, it's not super straightforward, and I don't know which WCAG they last looked at, but each time going forward it's a little bit clearer, a little bit more agnostic, platform agnostic. 2.2 has got a lot more about mobile. 3.0, which is going to come along sometime, is in draft at the moment, has a lot more focus on end users, because at the moment it's all about technical compliance, and if you don't get end users involved, then it's a bit like designing a car and then cranking up the production line and getting 100,000 onto the road without actually ever test driving one to see if the computer model does actually translate into a safe, nice car to drive.
Okay, that question was from Ross. Carol says thanks for the answer to her question, and Ross has come back again. Well, what is the one thing that you would like web developers to do differently? I'm guessing Ross is a web developer.
Ideally, just the basics, really. If WCAG is a bit daunting, if you have a look on our website, AbilityNet, all one word, if you search for AbilityNet and Sculpt, the normal spelling SCULPT, there's a brilliant article. Helen Wilson, she's at Worcestershire County Council, I think. She was faced with this problem where WCAG, it's too much to point people at when they've got a day job, and they just want to know what the kind of top priority things they can do. So they created this brilliant infographic. If you look on the article, SCULPT is an acronym standing for structure, which talks about headings and stuff. Color, that's contrast and use of color in conveying information. The U is for something else. Use of images. That's right. It's a bit of a torturous acronym, guys, but go with it. Use of images, and that talks about alt tags and stuff like that. Appropriate use of images. I could go on and on. The L is for links, making sure that links make sense out of context. Because me, as a blind person, if I want to get to a link on somewhere on the page, I might bring all the links up into a big list that appear over the top of the browser, and then I might start typing CON to see if there's a contact us link on this page, and then I can just hit enter and it'll click that link. But if half of those links just say more or click here, then that's useless to me. So links making sense out of context, etc., etc. So the answer to Ross's question is concentrate on the things that you can do, and having a handy acronym like that to kind of keep the low-hanging fruit or the kind of most high priority issues kind of front and center to be able to do that. For everyone else, a general top tip would be, we all use Office, we all use Microsoft products. There's a brilliant accessibility checker in there. For whatever reason, it's not at the top in the ribbon, it's a bit buried down. You can obviously customize your ribbon. So top tip would be to bring it up to the top level of your ribbon so that it's there for you to remember to run it, just like you would run the spell checker before you sent an email or saved off the final version of the document. That accessibility checker does just that. It gives you the top tips of how to make this document a bit more accessible.
Okay, there's a question from Will here. I work with people who have mild to severe learning disabilities, and I've been looking for augmented reality as a useful tool for supporting those people with their daily lives. Mm-hmm. Do we think this technology will develop quickly? I've looked at Vizxx, VUZIX, but there don't seem to be many alternatives for AR and smart glasses.
The smart glasses bit is the difficult bit. There are several apps out there that you can point your phone at something, like I mentioned before, appliances or whatever, and it'll give you useful information about what to do, which is aimed at people with a learning difficulty or disability. Pardon me, every year we have in the summer these Tech for Good awards, tech4good.com, techforgoodawards.com. And several years there have been winners which are apps that do just that. Aimed at people with learning difficulties and using the camera and AI and AR to give that information. I'm sorry, but I can't remember the names of any of them, even though I was the judges. I was one of the judges on them. That's terrible, isn't it? So if you go to techforgoodawards.com, or if you just go to abilitynet.org.uk and contact the inquiries people, we've also got an 0800 number on there if that's your thing, if that is easier. They'll be able to provide you with that information, because that's what we do. That's what we're all about, answering people's questions around how tech can help certain specific needs or people.
Okay. There's a final question, but it's not exactly clear to me, so I've asked for clarification. What approach would you recommend to someone looking to design better, more accessible experiences for organizations?
It's a valid, if general question.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the organization. If it's an SME, for example, then, there isn't as much of an onus for them to really, go to the nth degree. Just to try and make your websites and your digital services as inclusive as possible by trying to get to grips with WCAG, that would be great. If it's a bigger organization, though, then you're really beholden to start making sure that you've got the right internal systems, processes, tools, policies in place to do it properly and efficiently, and not just before go live at UAT, not a bolt-on activity. And increasingly, one of the services that we're providing, and there are freely downloadable versions of this, it's called DAM, DAMM, the Digital Accessibility Maturity Model, DAM. And basically what that is a framework, a spreadsheet, basically, that covers different areas of your organization's internal and customer facing processes and you can gauge where you are between levels 1 and 5. Level 1 is like ad hoc, informal, there's nothing really in place, right up to level 5, which is like structured, resourced, formalized, etc., repeatable. And there's bullet points in each area. So where are you on procurement? Where are you on training? Where are you on guidelines and policies, etc.? And you can do it self driven, or you can get in contact with us and we'll arrange online meetings where we talk you through and get a consensus of where you are today on all of these, go away and create a report that then identifies how you can sort of best prioritize to take you up a level or 2 levels, over the next 6 or 12 months or whatever. And then towards the end of that process, you'll have all the right training in place, you'll have all the right structures, you'll have the right resources and the right tools, etc., to do it as part of the day job.
So we've got one person who's raised their hand. I'll just let Jock talk. He should be able to turn your microphone on now, Jock.
Yes, was a couple of questions. Will the video be posted somewhere on the internet?
Yes. It takes a bit of time to be processed, but it will be posted on the BCS Oxfordshire website.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else got any other questions? Thanks to Jeff for going through those questions. Robin, thank you so much. It's a really fantastic presentation, very interesting, and lots of questions. Always a good sign. Anybody who's tempted to try and make their own transparent screen, safety first. Be careful, and I encourage you all to check out Robin's Dot to Dot podcast. Thank you very much, Robin.
Robin, thank you very much. Very compelling.
Thank you for
very
having
interesting.
Me on.
Thank you.
Brilliant, guys. Any questions at all? By all means, pass my email on to the attendees. If anyone wants to get in contact direct.
Fantastic. Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Andrew.